So we're going to be going over page 548, the odds, starting with number 1. We need to take 7/40 and write that as a decimal. So in order to do that, we divide the numerator by the denominator, add a decimal point, hop it up, add 3 zeros. 40 does not go into 7, goes in 0 times. 40 goes into 70 once. At 40, subtract, we get 30, bring down. Next we need to divide 40 into 300, goes in 7 times. At 280, subtract, we get 20, bring down. 40 goes into 200 5 times. At 200, subtract, and it comes out even. Number 3. Same directions for number 3. We're going to take negative 21/16 and turn that into a decimal. Again, it doesn't matter which is bigger. It's always the numerator being divided by the denominator. Decimal point, hop it up, 3 zeros. 16 does go into 21. It goes in 1 time. At 16, subtract, and we get 5. Bring down. Next, we're going to divide 16 into 50. It goes in 3 times. 3 times 16 is 48. Subtract, and we get 2. Bring down. 16 goes into 20 once. At 16, subtract, and we get 4. Bring down. 16 goes into 40 twice. At 32. Now, we've been in the habit of always dividing to the thousands place. So if you were to stop here, that would probably be just fine. If you look up the answers in the textbook, it does go in evenly into the next number. 16 goes into 85 times evenly. But if you didn't divide that far, that's totally fine. Keep in mind that this was a negative. Number 5. For number 5, now we're going to take the decimal and we're going to express that as a fraction. So remember, it's all about place value, or how we were to read the decimal. We would read this as negative 122 thousandths, because this digit here is in the thousands place. The directions said we needed to express our answer in simplest form. So if we divided those each by 2, we would get negative 61 over 500. Number 7. Okay, same directions, negative 4 and 45 hundredths. Again, we will just write it as we read it. Negative 4 and 45 hundredths. The directions did say simplest form, so we can just take these and reduce to get negative 4 and 9/20. Okay, I need to turn the page. Let's take a look at number 9. Okay, number 9, we are going to add. We have negative 4 over 9 plus negative 23 over 18. Well, when we add, we need to make sure that we have a common denominator. So if I look at 9 and 18, 18 is going to be the easiest denominator to use. So our first fraction becomes negative 8 over 18 plus we had negative 23 over 18. When we add fractions, the denominator stays the same. And then this means I owe 8 and I owe 23, which means I owe a total of 31 over 18. So then let's work to change that into a mixed number. 18 goes into 31 once. There are 13 left over out of 18. Don't forget to carry over that negative. Number 11. Oh, good, decimals. 9.2 plus negative 2.8. We've talked about this. Think of these as dollar amounts. I have $9.20. You can put a zero in if that makes it easier to think about. I owe you $2.80. So we are going to subtract these to figure out what it is that we still owe. When I subtract those, make sure the decimal points are lined up. You can borrow if you need to. I have more than I owe, which makes it a positive 6.4. Number 13, 3 and 9 tenths times negative 8 thirds. Okay, mixed numbers have to be improper fractions first. 10 times 3 is 30, plus 9 is 39 over 10, times negative 8 over 3. I recommend reducing first. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 39 13 times, 2 goes into 10 5 times, 2 goes into 8 4 times. I'm just going to put that negative right here. Okay, then we can multiply straight across. 5 times 1 is 5. Then we need to work out 13 times 4, which is 52, and it was a negative. Then we need to change that into a mixed number because we started with a mixed number. 5 goes into 52 10 times with 2/5 left over. Carry over your negative. Number 15. Negative 4.4 times negative 6 2/100. Okay, so I'm gonna set it up with 6 2/100 on top, 4.4 underneath. I know right away 6 times 4 is 24. That's a good estimate. That's gonna help me figure out my decimal point. So here we go. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 0 is 0. 6 times 4 is 24. If you had an error with 15, perhaps you forgot a placeholder. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 0 is 0. And 6 times 4 is 24. Add them up. 8, 8, 4, 6, and 2. I know my estimate was 24, which tells me my decimal point should go here. If I want to be extra sure, there were 3 digits behind the decimal point, 1, 2, 3. And let's check our sign. A negative times a negative is a positive, or you can think of it the opposite of a negative makes this a positive. Okay, turn the page for the last few. Number 17. Okay, 17 is negative 3/5 times 2 and 2/7. They put that in parentheses, you don't really have to, times negative 3 and 3/4. So let's turn these mixed numbers into improper fractions. I'm gonna drop down my negative 3/5 times, I'm gonna use this symbol instead. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 2 is 16 over 7, times 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 is 15 over 4. And I'm gonna drop in my negative. Let's check for some reducing. Remember, anything on top can be reduced with anything on the bottom. So 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 16 4 times. Then I'm gonna reduce these two. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 15 3 times, and I'm just gonna carry over my negative sign. I don't see any more reducing that I can do, so I'm gonna multiply straight across. 3 times 4 is 12, times 3 is 36. My denominator, 1 times 7 times 1 is 7. And then let's change that into a mixed number. 7 goes into 36 5 times with 1 left over. Let's check our sign to make sure it's a positive. So I have 2 negatives here in the problem, and the opposite of a negative would make our answer a positive. 19. How many 2.25 pound containers can you make with 24.75 pounds of almonds? So this is telling us that we need to divide. So we have 24 and 75 hundredths of a pound of almonds, and those containers need to be 2 and 25 hundredths of a pound each. Divisor has to be a whole number, multiply by 100. Do the same to the dividend. So we are really dividing 225 into 2,475 and oofty. Okay, so let's work out the division. Doesn't go into 2, doesn't go into 24. 225 goes into 247 once at 225. Subtract, and I get, ooh, yay, 22. Bring down, oh, that is so lovely, 225 into 225 once evenly, which means 11 containers. Yay, worked out evenly. Okay, last one, 21. All right. The table shows the rainfall in inches for 3 months compared to the yearly average. Is the total rainfall for the 3 months greater than or less than the yearly average? Explain. Okay, so one of the key words, it says total. So we need to start by adding these 3 together. The numbers were negative 0.86, 2.56, and negative 1 and 24 hundredths. So we talked about adding together what we owe first, and then we can deal with the positives. So if I add 1 and 24 hundredths and 86 hundredths, 6 plus 4 is 10, carry the 1, 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 1 more is 11, carry the 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So this is the amount that we owe. So these two would combine to negative 2.1. I can have the 0 or not, okay? So I have 2.56, I owe 2.1, so we need to subtract these to figure out, subtract these to figure out what we still owe. So 2.56 minus 2.1, 6 minus 0 is 6, 5 minus 1 is 4, drop in our decimal point, 2 minus 2 is 0. I have more than I owe. So if we read back at the question, is the total rainfall for the 3-month period greater than or less than the yearly average? Well, this is a positive, which means it's greater than. You can think of the yearly average as being 0, okay? So if it's greater than that, then it would be more than. Okay, hope that helped.